Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of When God Speaks. Today I'm flying solo, and so I'll ask all of you to keep Madeline in prayer as she takes some time to recover physically. She needs this time off, and so we're going to allow her to do that. So, Madeline, you are in our prayers. Today, I want to simply talk about a couple of things, actually, three specific things: what you say, what you do, and how you impact. And this is all around a central story that happened to me. There's no better example than myself, but something that happened in my home that was a learning. It was a learning for me. Even knowing all that I know, I grow daily. I learn every single day. And this time the lesson came specifically from my 13-year-old son. So the story goes like this. We were all together, and we have a habit of getting together after dinner and helping with the dishes, and each person has their own role, but we ate together and we cleaned together. That's how you stay together. So my son goes on to tell me, and he's into video games, right? And it's excited about that. I'm teaching him some entrepreneurial lessons that he can use at 13 that could possibly set him up for a great career. And so, I share that with him. Uh, so he begins to tell me a story, and in that story, he uses the word dang, right? So uh, if you know anything about me, my household, uh, we refrain from using, at least we try our very best to refrain from using words that are just fillers, that don't effectively allow us to communicate our feelings, uh, that put people down, that are aimed to destroy rather than build. And substitute words, right? So I consider this a very substitute word for the word damn. And so I heard him use the word, and immediately, my father came up because I don't want my son to have to go through any pain, although I know he will, but needlessly, right? There you're gonna get some pain, but there's some that are needless, and you try to avoid that at all costs. And I try to teach him how to avoid those things. So in any case, he uses the word, and I say, "Now, son, let me stop you before you go any further, and let me tell you that I don't particularly like that word because it's a filler word. It's a substitute word for another word that means no good. And so I try to convey that it was not a good word to be using in communication, um, and he started to justify why he was using it. And so the conversation didn't go as smoothly as I had intended originally, and I let him know exactly how I felt about it, and my stance on that word being used in the home. So the conversation is had, and he goes on. Obviously, when the lion roars, things things get a little shaky in the home, and I could immediately tell that the environment just got infused with something that I had no intention on putting out. But and so everything's done. Everybody goes their way, and my wife and my daughter were still around, and my wife says, you were a little too harsh with him. And here I go trying to justify why I took the route that I did. Um, she didn't try to convince me either way. She just trying to convey what she felt during the whole thing. And so, she's conveying this, and my daughter looks at her, and I'm looking at both of them, and my daughter looks at her with a big smile, and she says, "You have grown." And she's talking to my wife now, and I'm over here just been chastised. But it was such a pleasure to see my daughter uh, realize the growth that my wife had undergone, or the growth that she had experienced by what she said. Now, I don't know if any of them felt like I digressed by what I said, but it was nice. It was nice to see someone reflect on what she said, have a smile, and commend her for her growth, right? So let's talk a little bit about what you say, right? What you say, and this being when God speaks, what you say has a lot of value. Now, you can detract from that value by how you continue to communicate, but your very words have value. And so, in this particular situation, I identified a word that in my home we don't put too much value on. And since I teach my son that every word he speaks will be accounted for at the end, and that is my belief, that then I was trying to protect him from for the, basically from using things that are not going to give him any value. But in trying to do that, I removed or I took away from the value of my counsel, uh, based on the environment that I produced. I aimed to do something good for him. And what it turned out to be was I created an environment where I became the jeopardizer of the household environment. Now, I did not use any uh, words that would be used commonly among other groups, but I guess I guess I was just too zealous around what I was saying, and the passion went from a positive thing to a negative thing. So you have to be careful what you say. You have to be careful. Even the well intended words could go astray and impact the environment. And so you don't want to do that. Um, so, I talk to my son. I try to, clear the air. Um, but frankly, he just wasn't interested, right? So it's something that I will have to work with and work out. Uh, so what do you do? So let's talk about what you do, right? Because there's a difference between sometimes what you say and actually what you do. And this is one of those cases, right? What I was saying was one thing, and then what I ended up doing was another. And although it wasn't in any demeaning or degrading way, it still was accepted in not such a good way. So you have to be careful with what you do, right? So you may have a word in you and you want to let others hear you, Uh, but then you may be combating that by your actions. In turn, my wife's actions, what she did and how she communicated, kind of right sided the whole situation there locally to the point where my daughter was proud of her for both what she said and what she did. And so I congratulate my wife as well. She has indeed grown. Let's talk about impact. Um, by the title of this show, When God Speaks, you have to listen and observe what and how he says it so that you can actually be effective, right? Number one, God doesn't speak unless it's direly needed. And when he speaks, you know, you feel it, you hear it. Sometimes not only one person, not only will he tell you, but then someone else will tell you, and then even a third person will tell you. And so it's very clear that he's talking, but are you willing to listen? Are you willing to listen? So, in that, your actions are crucial to the not only the communicating, but actually listening to what God is saying, or what people are saying, or what God is saying through people. Um, and then your impact, right? In that scenario, that story that I just told, the person that had the positive impact was my wife, and the person that had the negative impact was me. And I don't mind telling the truth, right? So if I was the one on the bad end there, I'll claim it. The point is not just to claim it, but to do something about it, right? So um, this is how we grow. This is how we are able to listen to God when He speaks. This is how we're able to listen and obey and take positive actions on what God is speaking to us about. But having the ability to take action is one thing, and actually doing it is another. So I encourage everyone, um, if you have to communicate, to think about it and present it in a way that it will be received and actionable. Um, that if you have to do something, that you do it and it's well thought, because whether you like it or not, or you agree that it is a thing or not, you will always have an impact, right? So God aims to have a positive impact on our life. And so I encourage you and I encourage myself that whatever we do has a positive impact on all the lives that we come across. And that is what I wanted to share with you today. Like I mentioned earlier, please keep Madeleine in your prayers. And we will see you next week when we continue on When God Speaks. Have a blessed weekend.